Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 24th Board of Education meeting. If you could please rise for the pledge. Thank you. James, could you take attendance?
Yep. President McDonough.
Here.
Vice President Aldred. Here. Secretary Summers here. Treasurer Whitney. Here. And Trustee Gibson. Absent. Trustee Atchison.
Here.
And Trustee Capigiorni.
Here.
Thank you. Any changes to the board agenda? I have none. No? All right. Scheduled public comment. We have one. Marissa.
Hi, good evening. So I know the governance committee,
Sorry.
That's
I don't know
okay.
what it's doing. It's right there.
Okay,
Take two.
okay, so, sorry. I went to the governance committee meeting, and there was discussion about, so like when a community member or a parent emails a member of the board, and like maybe they only send it to one person or two people, and then there was a lot of discussion about what should happen so that all 7 members know what's in that email. And it sounds like the board is thinking about adopting a policy. I don't know if it's a formal policy, it probably should be, of quickly forwarding any emails that anyone gets to all 7 members. So I just want to express, like, there could be circumstances or reasons where a community member or a parent might intentionally be sending an email only to one member of the board. They might not want 7 people to see it. So I'm asking for some discretion when we're deciding if we're going to, forward a parent email to everyone, that there's like some leeway in that, depending on what's contained in the email. So like if it has to do with a student or a child or like something sensitive, or that there's not just this automated sharing with all of these people when it might be something where they're just sharing their opinion and they're intentionally only sending it to one person. So maybe there's a reply like asking for permission to share it with everyone. Maybe there's like some nuances there, and I want to make sure that we're careful of that. And I don't know what decisions are going to be made tonight. I think the board should probably vote on what they want to do, and there should probably be a policy, or it should be put into the manual or something. So it's just something I feel pretty strongly about. We have some board members who seem to like really encourage and want to hear from parents, and we have other board members who maybe don't want to hear, from parents as much. So those are the board members that maybe people are more comfortable sharing things with. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Marissa. Item 4 is our consent agenda. We have minutes, bills payable, and HR updates. And I just wanted to ask real quick, John, I know I had put it on our Q&A, but for the purchase card, we had talked about it back in April about having the expenses listed out, and you had referenced Lake Oriens that was coming soon, that kind of setup. That was the question. I know you had responded with you weren't sure of my question, so I just wanted to have an update on that real quick.
What we have on for our transparency reporting now is similar to Lake Oriens. It lists the, based on the transparency guidance from the MDE. So what I wanted to clarify with you is you mentioned the accounts payable checks, and then you mentioned the credit card stuff. Those are 2 different pieces of data posting. So the credit card one, the schedule that's out there, for a credit card, it lists everybody who has a credit card, what their credit limits are. And then the accounts payable check is just the monthly accounts payable check listings. That includes ACH checks, wires, things like that.
That makes sense, thank you. And that's the 141,000 that is listed out from the purchase card spending.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, would anybody like to make a motion? Mike, thank you.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support? Sarah Beth, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 5, our superintendent's report. Thank you. I'm so sorry. There was a community concern that was raised regarding board members being reimbursed for travel expenses, right? For conferences, the most recent one, Shane and Ann had went to Mackinac with Tanya for the MASB workshop, and of course, as a board, we encourage that and always encourage professional learning and growth. And by approving the consent agenda, we have satisfied the policy requirement according to Jennifer at Troon. We did receive legal opinion to make sure that this is acceptable. However, to be further in line with our policy that states that we should be asking for board approval either prior. So for example, when we had our superintendent search, we did a blanket approval for all of the board members who went to cover travel expenses. And then for other instances, when it's 1 or 2, they would bring their report back and show the itemization. For example, when Aaron and Mary went to DC. So 2 different ways to do it, both completely acceptable, but in the future, we are going to ensure, and now we have a process in place with our assistant and superintendent, that any expenses, there will be a motion put on to our agenda to ensure that we are approving either before or the meeting directly after. So I just wanted to put that out there for clarification. Did anybody have questions on that?
Thank you for clarifying. I wonder if that might be a good spot.
Yeah.
I wonder if that might be a good spot as well to kind of give a high-level report out of classes they took, or just showing what we're doing, right, as a board.
Yeah.
And so that might be a good spot as well to do that.
I think that's great. I think that maybe that's something the governance committee could explore and implement into our operating procedures, just as another added layer of understanding for, especially for new board members. And that way we get into that kind of routine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Help me expand on that a little bit. Give me some more context of what you're talking about from the governance.
To include directly into the operating procedures, right? Because that is our roadmap for all new board members,
Right.
especially.
Yeah.
And in this instance, we have 2 new board members who hadn't been through that process before.
Okay.
And simply emailed their expenses over, not knowing that there was that added step that the board had to approve. And so just as we talked about as we're going through policy, some things to just lift up and maybe highlight into the operating procedures, especially for new board members who haven't been through these processes before.
And we have a policy number, so we can put a section in there about reimbursement requests.
Correct. I believe it's 2305.
And then refer back to that policy.
Mm-hmm.
So with a lot of things on the governance side, and we're kind of getting a little ahead, but like when it has the policy stuff, we're going to use that as the directive to it, but always referring back to the policy itself as the main guide and stuff. And it'll either be hyperlinked or at least bolded on what's there. That way, if we happen to update that policy, we're not trying to update it in 2 spots, and we get a mix match of information or direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 200s are essentially our board bylaws. So
Yeah.
that in the welcome packet, that is of course said that these are the ones you should be familiar with, and this and that. There's a lot. We've been through a
Right.
policy change. This is a new procedure. It's completely understandable. And so as we discussed, the really important ones that you wouldn't necessarily know off the bat, we should maybe insert right into the operating procedures, because I feel like that is the most referenced document for new board members, unless I'm off base.
No, we're still saying the same thing, just different ways of saying it, so I understand what you're saying.
Fantastic.
Good.
All right, thank you for that reminder, Dr. Milligan.
Okay. And I apologize. I've decided to get a summer cold. I made it through the whole Michigan winter without being sick, but I waited until summer. So that's exciting. So I got that loungy voice going on. All right, I have 3 things that I'm going to discuss tonight. First of all, that picture makes me very happy. Even though it was at the end of school, I just envision our students right now doing all that types of things and just having so much fun. At least that's my hope for all of our students. So 3 things that I want to review tonight. I want to provide an overview of the strategic plan that my team will be presenting tonight and seeking approval. This is the enhanced version from our June 12th workshop that we took your feedback and improved it, so thank you for your feedback. Also want to go over the TRSIA survey. That's the trauma responsive survey. Talk about what's the information that we received from that survey and how it will enhance our trauma-informed work throughout the district. And finally, I'm going to share a pretty exciting enhancement to our Gaggle program. Right now we have Gaggle that is monitored by staff entirely 24/7. So if you can imagine the impact that has on staff and really tapping them out. So this is a pretty exciting announcement that I'll share. So first part, as we talked previously at our workshop, the strategic plan, the framework consists of our vision, which is the future we imagine for our students, the mission, what we do to achieve this future, and the core values, shared beliefs that guide our work. We started this work back in the fall, preparing for our community forum in January, and we got lots of engagement and conversation. That was the day we had the snow day, and people still came and drove, so that was really exciting. And then we have our strategic goals. These are the most important priorities to achieve our mission and vision. We have our aligned action, which are primary initiatives to enable realization of our goals. And finally, the measures, which are tangible metrics to assess progress towards our goals. So that's kind of the general framework that we'll be presenting tonight. My whole team will be presenting that. Very exciting accomplishment. And again, lots of excuse me. Yes. Lots of input from community, staff, parents, students. So our overview, this is what we presented at the last workshop back in June. And you'll see that our vision, we landed on empowering learners, building community, inspiring futures. And as one of our parents said, put it on the bus. Nice, short, sweet, and meaningful. Our mission, providing a supportive, safe, and opportunity-rich educational experience that fosters belonging, builds self-empowerment, and prepares learners to contribute to a connected community. And our core values include empowerment, belonging, innovation, and integrity. We have 4 goals that are aligned with our vision, mission, and core values. So goal 1, safe, supportive, and connected schools. Goal 2, knowledgeable, critical thinkers and communicators. Goal 3, empowered and engaged team. And goal 4, innovative, sustainable systems and structures. And my team will speak to each of those tonight. Now, the feedback from June 12th, here are the things that we changed based on your feedback. We wanted to make sure we lifted up the phrase culture of safety throughout the document, specifically in Goal 1. Our aligned action 1.1, we updated it to include trauma-informed practices. It's what a lot of the work was, but we weren't explicit, so we appreciate you guys sharing that. Aligned action 2.2, We enhanced that to emphasize safety. Strategy for 2.3 was adding a strategy to develop a visual tool to help students better understand college and career pathways early in their academic journey. And if you recall the conversation, sometimes these academic pathways start in middle school. And so if our students aren't aware of what pathways are available to them, they might miss that on-ramp and not have that chance again. So that was a great suggestion. Aligned Action 3.2, we added safety protocols and procedures. In Aligned Action 4.2, we modified that to reflect a commitment to a culture of safety. So again, just really lifting up the specific trauma-informed safety practices and making sure that students are aware of their options. So lots of thank yous. The community forums were just phenomenal, as much information as people would share, and they were fully invested. Like the conversations people were having, the dialogue at the table, the feedback was really valuable. I appreciate all of you who were able to attend these sessions. I think that not only gave us a chance for your input, but it also gave the community an understanding of your commitment to this strategic plan as well. Our parents who were there really looked at how this would impact their children, not just now, but in the future. So they shared lots of insight from a parent lens. Our community members, we had several students who attended, several of the student ambassadors at the high school attended. One of them talked about how impactful it was for her. We went to the middle school when we were putting the application out for middle school, and she was talking to the middle school students, and that's what she brought up. She's like, she felt that she had a say in what the district was doing, and she just found that really rewarding. Our partners throughout the county who work with us with our students, they were there. Many staff members were there, and then of course our village and township leaders. So thank you to everyone who attended those sessions. I just really appreciate the time you carved out to be there. I have huge thank you for my team. They have been a part of this process since last summer, and they were the driving force behind all of these areas. So Todd Barlis was instrumental in Goal 1. Pam Beal was instrumental in Goal 3. Emperor John Fitzgerald was instrumental in Goal 4. Anita Conja-Collins was Goal 2. Ryan Reed, Goal 3. Janet Schell, Goal 2. Christy Smith, she actually kind of split her work. She was in Goal 4 with John, but then also she had a component in Goal 1, yes. And then Allison Williman in Goal 1. So throughout this whole process, they've been the ones taking the feedback, synthesizing that feedback, and going back and forth between the document and the feedback, and the document and the feedback, and wanting to make sure that they were taking people's thoughts and ideas into consideration. And if you've ever done any type of research along these lines, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. That's why many school districts actually hire people from outside of the district to do this work. But because we wanted this to be meaningful to us, we wanted it to represent us and Oxford Community Schools, we really embraced that opportunity. So thank you so much to my team. I really appreciate it. Gary Van Staveren joined us in the spring, and he was huge. There was no way we could have gotten the strategic plan to where it needed to be without his help. He's been instrumental in the metrics, helping us craft the metrics, and he's currently developing with a company the data dashboard that we'll have on our website, and we'll be able to see the progress with each of our goals. So that's pretty exciting, and he'll talk about that in a little bit. And of course, our Justin Fortney, there you are. Just all of the communications and organizations and getting the meeting set up. So thank you, Justin, appreciate that. So again, a lot of people, it took a lot of people to do this work. So when you see the outcome of the work, I just wanted to make sure you knew that it was a entire effort on the community, on the schools, on the districts, like everybody having a huge part in this. So a huge thank you to everybody on that. Very excited to share it with you tonight. Easter Seals, Trauma Responsive School Implementation Assessment, the TRSIA. This was a self-assessment that Easter Seals implemented in the district. It started actually a year ago, last spring. And the whole purpose of this assessment is to assess our current trauma-informed practices and identify areas of growth and becoming more effective at what we're doing in our schools and throughout the district, right? And so it's really looks at it from an organizational standpoint. It's no one component. It's a big picture look. And if you think about how we've implemented things from an organizational standpoint, like we wanted to get as much out there as fast as possible to support all students and staff. So it's not surprising that sometimes it's hard. The right hand doesn't necessarily know what the left hand is doing, especially if it's not directly tied to the strategic plan, which now it will be. So over 600 staff members across the district participated. They asked questions regarding various aspects of trauma-informed practices, and it focused more on intentionality, not is it good or is it bad, like how intentional are these practices. And so the scores indicate areas to grow in intentionally. So I appreciate the data. For me, all data is helpful, and being able to better understand what's working, what's not working, what do we need to adjust. And so we identified both areas of strength and growth available to the district. And this statement in the report really jumped out at me. It just speaks to the heart of our district. Among the staff of Oxford School District, there is a strong desire to help and to serve. That is something each of you helped to create, and we hope you find encouragement throughout this conversation. So again, I think that speaks to the commitment of our staff for our students here in Oxford, and that is always evident when I go to the schools. So I'm not going to read through these. You have it in your packet, but essentially there are 8 domains in which they ask questions. They had focus groups. They did interviews to try to get a better understanding of these 8 domains. And these are things that will directly align. When we talk about our strategic plan, you'll see direct alignment with our goals and our aligned actions. So that'll be really cool. When our team comes back together towards the end of July, we're going to be working with Easter Seals to essentially take this information and pair it up with our strategic plan and tie it to that work so that it's sustainable and it's a clear focus. So here are some strengths that were pointed out in the report. Staff seek more ways to support students, which is pretty amazing because they work really hard to support them right now. Staff recognize a wide range of student supports. There's strong community partnerships that provide family resources. Restorative practices are well trained and widely used. And that's pretty impressive since that's a relatively recent program that we've started implementing. SEL training enables staff to meet students' needs, and staff can identify trauma-related behaviors. There's supportive, responsive staff relationships that are evident, and strong peer-to-peer support among students. So those are some of the strengths that the report lifted up. The areas for growth, staff seeking clearer communication about available student support. And that's kind of like, again, the right hand knowing what the left hand is doing. So for example, you might have counselors who are very familiar with the supports and the implementation for students, but it may not be communicated across the staff, right? Because it's their specialty. Include more staff in multidisciplinary teams to address trauma and students' needs. Increase transparency around how trauma affects student performance. I think that's a big one that we could really lean into heavily, because I have no doubt that, if your brain is traumatized, there's quite a bit of research out there that speaks to the inability to access your frontal cortex, and that's where your thinking happens up here. But when you are experiencing trauma or reliving trauma, you actually get stuck in what's referred to as your hindbrain. And that's the brain that we share with reptiles, and it's our fight or flight sort of part of the brain. So I think that's something we can definitely strengthen. Strengthen support for staff experiencing secondary trauma, that's a big one as well. We don't tend to focus on that as much as we should. So I think really looking at resources and support for that is going to be important. Provide better understanding of how student trauma history integrates into IEPs and 504s. Improve access to information on student interventions, and use consistent trauma-informed language, as well as protect advisory time for SEL lessons. And I find that really impressive, because sometimes, we get a lot that we want to share with kids. And so the fact that our staff is saying, hey, these lessons are important, we want to make sure that this time that we've set aside, that we honor for this purpose. I think that is very impressive. So our next step with that is going to be, again, our cabinet team will be looking at the results along with Easter seals to better understand them, and we're going to tie that into our strategic plan. So Gaggle enhancements. So we negotiated a new contract with Gaggle to include these pieces. Historically, our staff outside of the school day on weekends took care of monitoring Gaggle. Again, this is when students are on a district device or using a district network that we would monitor interactions on that. So it's a 24/7 monitoring around the clock when they're using those devices. During the day, those reports go directly to our staff members at the school. After hours is a little different because they're in their parents' care, but we still want to make sure we're monitoring those interactions, and if there are any concerns, that we are able to notify the appropriate individuals. So Gaggle safety team handles incidents outside of school in urgent cases. So if there's something that is being stated on a district device or network, they can contact local authorities or social workers directly for wellness checks. So that's huge. So that's a very responsive, quick response to a situation. Up to this point, our staff members would have to stay up throughout the night to respond to this. This is after working all day, so it just wasn't an efficient way to do that, and it was really tapping out our staff, right? And then, so that speaks to that on the last one, reduces the burden on school staff by managing after-hour emergencies. So we're super excited about this. We're super excited to provide enhanced care outside of school while also giving our staff the ability to rejuvenate so they can go to work each day ready to serve our students at 100%. Now, the other piece to Gaggle that we're enhancing is Gaggle Reach Out. So this is a resource for students. This supplements district efforts by offering additional mental health outreach. So if a student is in crisis and they're not feeling comfortable to come tell anybody, they can scan this QR code and it puts them in contact with resources to help support them. The outreach messages, it's trained personnel that their response will be tailored to each student. And then detailed notes and outcomes from each outreach are then provided to the district to follow up. So they make sure they connect those outside situations with school situations so we can make sure we know what's going on with our kiddos. And then ensures no students slip through the cracks, especially those struggling silently. We do have students, my daughter was the same way. She wasn't telling me what was going on. I had no idea, and she was right under my roof, and I saw her every day. So I think something like this could have been really helpful in that situation. And as many layers of support that we can put in place. Again, we're trying to make sure we have as much support as possible so we don't miss any students. So that is Gaggle. So some pretty exciting things. Questions or thoughts?
You said we have this in our packet,
We have
the slides you just showed.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't get that, but then.
Oh, it's not in, oh, it should be in board book? It's in
Okay,
board book,
all right.
yeah,
I
yeah, sorry.
just didn't pull it up, that's okay.
No.
The other thing was, okay, that thought left as fast as it came
Oh,
through.
sorry.
So.
Let me know if you remember.
Oh, is this available on the website for the community to see?
Is the
The.
Presentation?
Your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Dr. Milligan? Moving into item 6, our committee updates. We have 2. James, would you like to share governance committee?
Yeah, so we met last week and covered a variance of topics. Let me grab my form here, my page. But the ones that we stuck on or really focused on was reviewing the policy that you sent over, the 2201, board policies, board powers and general powers of the board, which kind of led us into the other topic about what we talked about around emails and communication to the board and stuff. And this policy itself actually calls out that we as a board have to work together as a board of 7, right? And so doing so, we're trying to look at ways to make sure that we all have the most adequate information for when we're here at the board table making decisions, when we're voting, as well as being informed of what the community feels and stuff. And I fully respect to what Marissa was saying earlier on, if there's people that have concernings of student like FERPA or HIPAA or things like that, it may not be appropriate to send out to the mass board. But in some cases, there's things that come that we're looking for responses for, and the responses come a couple weeks after the board meeting, and it would have been helpful to have that beforehand. And so we're just trying to figure out a way to make sure that everybody on the board, regardless of who is on the email, has the most adequate and most current information, to be more inclusive, to really build that team effort. That way nobody feels excluded, or rather unintentional or intentional. So I sent you guys an email over the weekend, so I figured to open up, see what else you guys wanted to talk about around that stuff, get your feelings.
Any additional input? Well, I'm personally happy that we're having this conversation. It's been something that has just been out there without a clear procedure for a while. And so I think that getting it ironed out as a board and deciding how we want to move forward, what's really important to me is that however we choose to move forward, we just make it publicly known so that it's an expectation, right?
Right.
If somebody now understands that it will be shared with everybody, or whatever the board decides, just that we communicate that. That's all that I ask, and I would like to get a handle around this situation because there has been quite a few different instances that have come up, not just community members who decide to put 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So I think it's important that we share our thoughts on how we would like to see that moving forward.
I also, the other part of the discussion that we talked about is like when we do responses. So for the most part, any kind of formal response comes from the board president, so yourself. And either stating there directly or, it'll be apparent that the entire board gets copied on that response back to the person. Therefore, we kind of know maybe the initial stuff that comes, but then also the responses back to the people. And then that way, right now, you being in that position would save you some time of then doing round robin calling to kind of let everybody know we can all have the most current stuff. And then if we have questions, we could always reach back out, right? And look for clarifications and stuff. So I think that process at the very least of whenever we respond back to things from the board stuff, that everybody on the board should be copied.
Yeah, absolutely. If we decide that moving forward, absolutely, that would be how we
Well,
handle it. And when there are And so that leads me to a side question.
Yep.
In preference of the board. So if I receive an email from Tanya, for example, and then I respond, and would you prefer as a board everyone forwarded, or say she asks me a question, I answer, and the way I have been doing it is she asks the question, I answer the question, I forward the whole exchange to you? Or would you prefer one-on-one? I know this is a little
Yeah.
off topic, but it
No.
just,
No,
as we're talking.
But it's similar to.
Yeah. Mhm.
I
I
think,
guess in general, it doesn't matter, it's just Tanya.
I'm trying to think through the scenarios, right? So, certainly, I understand Marissa's point as well, and I've received sensitive information from community members that are just like, an FYI, this is going on, right? I haven't considered forwarding any of those to the board as a whole. It's clear that those are coming to me directly. I've acted on some of them, but not forwarding, I guess, to the entire board, given the sensitive nature, I guess. And I guess some emails that are, I guess, just an FYI, I honestly am not the best at looking at distributions, always. But if I'm responding, I certainly copy everyone on a board response, right? If it's just like a thanks for letting me know, I'd probably just respond just directly to them. So I do understand there needs to be some kind of threshold or I guess nuance there on how we forward emails from the community, and I guess it depends, but in my opinion.
I think we're destined for quite a conversation, right? Because I think regardless of who they're to, I agree that when it comes to children, we set up a policy or procedure that speaks to the fact of communication to us in regards to from the community and or parent. If it has anything to do with the student, that be a 1A, right? Like, we don't just openly share communication in regards to a student. That seems pretty straightforward, right? When it comes to your email about board business or something that could become board business, I see potentially both sides. One, we want to have our community reach out to us. Community reaches out to whomever they choose comfortable with. If we institute a policy that essentially says, regardless of what you're trying to reach out to, the entire board is going to hear about it, does that encourage or discourage communication to us? That's a great question. I don't know that. I don't think there's an easy answer, and I'm not speaking to an answer. I'm speaking to dialogue about how do we maintain efforts to build communication, involvement, trust, all of that. At the same time, having an email that's sensitive when it comes to any board business and then formulating a response in a timely manner, I can't even imagine how hard that is, considering how many inquiries we get and how do we formulate as a board a response. We don't have that dialogue. So to put that on one person is, I think, unfair as a board, as we're supposed to operate as a board. So it can go both ways. We should absolutely talk about a response as a collective unit, not put it on one person. This board isn't one person. But how would we do that if we didn't communicate the emails, right? So it feels like a much deeper conversation that I think we owe it to Shane and our collective board power to have a conversation and get into it. And I would propose we actually add this to like a 20-minute, a 15-minute. Maybe it's multiples, so we don't kill a whole meeting per se on the topic. But I agree with you, Jim. I mean, having communication for all of us to be aware is a huge deal. To what level? I think discretion is definitely a hard part to be. And I don't know if the discretion on one person would then come back to that one person later, well, your discretion I didn't agree with. Well, measure discretion. I don't want to get into that because then that just adds more complexity to an already complex situation. So I don't mean to confuse things, and I'm probably all over the map, but I can see a lot of different angles here, and I feel like we would need to best serve our community on a roadmap on how do we address the topic at hand, children, no children, board matter, no board member, matter, and the severity of the inquiry and or email when it comes to a board business, or if it could become board business specifically. I acknowledge that, James. That's a great point. How do we measure that? I mean, that's the question. I don't have an answer. I'm just dialogue talking.
Right. So back to your who does the responding. Right now, it's been, it's one person from the board that we designate, right? And it's been the board president. So whether you like it or not, when you go for that role and you get elected to that, that's part of the responsibility. So, it's a lot of work. As I'm sure you probably found even more and stuff from being there. So when it comes to that, I don't think that's anything that should be, because we can't work, aside from being at the board table, we can't do emails back and forth of how we're going to respond because now we're violating the Open Meetings Act, which, is a big no-no. So we got to do it here at the table. So that's why having all those emails coming across, or at least doing it, and I agree, there's going to be times where there's sensitive stuff. I think we're all adults and mature enough to know that. At the very least, if I was to get something, I'd probably send it to Amanda and Tanya, hey, for awareness, there you go. And then they figure it out, and then if Amanda seems deemed that needs to go to the entire board, there are things that have come before in the past that may seem as a privilege or sensitive information that becomes board business and things. So I'm also trying to caveat, like looking at that experience that we've had, that, there's been times where early on the board where I sat here and certain people, because they got comfortable, or the community or whoever emailed them was comfortable, and then they're having this whole discussion and I had no idea what they're talking about, and then I get filled in later, oh, that was an email, I'm sorry, we didn't get to you. Okay, well, I can't make an adequate decision, especially when we've moved and approved on something. And
That's a great point. I mean, that is a great point. And perhaps that is an angle to communicate a procedural change, that any email that is construed as board business or potential board business is going to go to Tanya and Amanda. From there, our leadership would then decide, should this then become a topic for discussion, and implore our leadership to have that. And again, to your point, you sign up for the job and there's aspects of the job. Okay, so there's that. But perhaps that's an angle to take that gives us what you're asking for, and what's meant on this topic is communication, and it's escalated. And the escalation would then deem it a conversation back to us, right? I mean, you never know till you try. And if we try it and it doesn't work, or we try it and it works with addendums to it, even, I think that's an opportunity.
Right, and I don't want to create a policy for the sake of policy. It should just be good general practice. And from the governance committee, when it got put over to our side of it, like we have the operating procedures that we're going to be doing. So a lot of that is like, how do we be the best board members possible, right? And so doing that and referencing, I mean, really the board policy, board powers, the 2200 stuff or the 2201, clearly states in there on that we need to act as a board. So there's our policy that we reference. Now, how do we stay true to that policy, and how do we make sure that we all have the adequate information and all the information to be effective in those duties and powers that are instilled us for that policy?
I realize this might be a larger conversation, a little more in-depth, but if we could start at what we can agree with leaving the table tonight. I would like to have, I don't want to wait until the end of July for a few reasons on what we can probably come to consensus on. For example, if a community member emails just me and a select few, or however it is, and it has to do with board business and or questions that need to be directed to Dr. Milligan and cabinet, whether they say we want this to be private or not, Can we, I think this is where we can agree, is that those specific questions that would be a matter of all board members and admin, we will forward. Can we, I think we can come to
Yeah.
consensus at least starting there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a bit to move on, and in that case, you know, let it, we don't need, I don't think we need a policy for this. I think
Right.
this is just general practice, same as any other of our operating procedures or generally accepted rules, right? This has never been discussed, or there has never been implementation of an actual procedure. So if we can at least agree on some things, and to your points, there are some nuanced, and I know when this discussion came up, I had 10 examples off the bat that I'm like, well, how would you like to do this? How would you like to do that? So,
There's that, but I
is there
also
any
would.
disagreement with that?
No.
Okay.
No. But I would absolutely support walking away from the table as a board, communicating to the community that when a email comes from regarding a student in any capacity, that is not a board issue, that is a superintendent and a president issue, and then it would be escalated or discussed if necessary to the board. But I would absolutely support the idea of keeping that information about our students in the smallest circle possible on a need-to-know basis, right? And that's regardless of anyone. Like if I got it or anyone on the board got an email about a student, that process should go to Tanya and Amanda. I don't think it's not up for discussion, right? I'm not.
Well, we don't handle student
I'm just
issues,
saying,
right?
that's
so,
the point,
Yeah.
right? But walking away, if it's a student-based email, to
Yeah.
Marissa's point, we escalate it, and that's where it stops, at least from our activity, right? And then it's handled however it's handled. I would agree with that one 100%.
Sarah Beth, anything from you or Ann?
I agree. If it's about a student, it has to stay as private as possible. If it's something that concerns the board, then yes, we forward it to, and I'm going to seek their guidance because I'm so new to this. If somebody does email me specifically, I will talk with them, with Tanya and Amanda, and I will talk with them. I'm not going to email you because I need confirmation in how do I proceed. But again, if it's a student, it needs to stay as private as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with Mike's statement that makes perfect sense to make sure that information gets directed to both Tanya and Amanda, and from there, as appropriate. That makes perfect sense.
No, I guess obviously, we're talking about something that requires action, right? Because I've gotten emails before from a parent just making me aware of a situation. They think it's being handled properly, but I want to make you aware that this is going on, right? And I've said, thank you for making me aware. And then if they would follow up, then certainly they're saying it's not being handled correctly or something, then certainly that becomes a board issue.
So in a situation like that, you just said on the email, you don't forward it to, at the very least,
Correct.
Tanya.
I haven't, if they're just making me aware specifically, they're
Okay.
emailing me specifically. I mean, obviously they have Tanya's email as well. So
Yeah.
if they're saying, hey, Mike, this is going on, I want to just make you aware, then said, thank you for making me aware. Let me know if I can help in any way.
So I struggle with that because if it's a school operation thing and maybe it isn't being handled, and now you have an email from somebody in the community, at the very least sending it over to Tanya, because I've gotten some of those, and I'll send it over to whoever, like the superintendent. I think a couple for Vicky, some for you. School lunch account, right? Came to only 3 of us on where the money goes, and I sent it to Tanya and I copied Amanda. I said, I think this is your wheelhouse. Has nothing to do with us. And gave it to them to take care of, and
Yeah,
then
sure.
Patty reached out and took care of all that stuff. But I still think it would be prudent for us as a team, with the superintendent included on that, for stuff like that, at the very least to when you get that, for awareness. Because it may be something that she's not aware of, and I don't want to overload her, but if it crops up to be something bigger, and we sat on it, didn't know it, or didn't do anything with it, I think that's the kind of the catch-22 that we're in some of those situations, where if it's something that could become larger, we don't do it. Later on down the road, hindsight is always 20/20, but there's been times where things have turned into more than just, hey, FYI and stuff. So I would make the recommendation or suggestion, that whenever I get those, or if you get those, to at the very least, filter it to the top two here and let them go from there. So that at very least Tanya for the school operation stuff, when it comes to student school operation things, and then I usually, I can't think if I haven't ever, but copy Amanda that she knows that we're reaching out to, because that's what we've always
Any
done.
email I've sent to Tanya, I copy Amanda. But I'm saying it depends on the wording, to me at least, right? I mean, if they're literally like, I don't want it, I'm making you aware because we have a personal relationship or whatever it is, and I don't want this escalated to their bosses at this moment because I think they're handling it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's
It's a judgment
choice
call,
that
and we can't. I don't think.
Right.
I was like, I don't think there's a perfect answer, Mike.
Yeah,
for
no,
that. Yeah,
but
I would.
but for sure, if it gets escalated or they say it's not being handled, then that's right away. It goes to
Right.
Tanya and Amanda. But I've seen it where it just goes away after that completely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was handled, and they were just a lot of it. I mean, some of it is they just want to make sure somebody else is aware, right? But they don't want to truly escalate it through, I guess, the proper channels, I'd say.
And I wouldn't consider an escalation, more just an awareness.
Yeah, and
a
I would-
situational awareness of what's going on. Of just, hey, Tanya, I got this email. You may be aware. Doesn't look like it's anything, and then you're done. And then that you give it to her, and then if something needs to be done, it's not. We should have or could have.
Having Tanya aware, 100% respect where you're coming from. I haven't had emails, but I've had conversations. It's important, I think, for all of us, especially our district leadership, to at least be aware. Doesn't mean they need to take action, right? But God forbid something happens where it's a small tick up from just awareness. I hate to have that come back on anybody to say, man, I thought I knew about that one, or I gave it a heads up on that one. It's almost like just give it to Tanya, CC Amanda. Just, hey, there's no action needed, but in case you need to take action or you feel there's an action, I'd rather have the conversation than not have the conversation. And I'd rather say, I'm sorry, but I wanted to protect our children. And I thought for awareness, our leadership needed to be prepared to protect our children. But that's also the point I made earlier, is like if we do something with inadvertently, you're breaking the trust of the communication back to us. It's like, there's got to be a give and take. But I think the continued communication and efforts to the community will understand what we're trying to do and not stop the communication, but hopefully increase the communication and then understand our reaction to the communication. That's a whole level of understanding we're struggling to try to build. And I think that dialogue continually will help with that point. But I do agree. I mean, if something came across and it's a FYI, hey, Tanya, FYI, maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not. Maybe it's something we need to have addressed too. A lot of different angles could take from that, but.
If you don't mind me interjecting just real quick.
Yeah.
So please don't ever hesitate to send me anything. I work with sensitive situations all the time. And if I get a situation just like that, Mike, that you mentioned, like, hey, just giving you a heads up, typically how I would handle that is depending on the circumstances. If it was at one of our schools, I'm out in the schools all the time. I just have a little thought in my head, like, hey, I'm just gonna kind of observe and just see. And then most likely I would reach back out to you and say, hey, just what are your thoughts on this situation? Do you think I should give the parent a call? Do you just and we can just.
We've had those conversations
Correct,
as well,
yeah.
right?
mean,
Yeah, I want to encourage all of you, don't ever hesitate. If it has to do with a student, the student's needs, just please, 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 the more information, the better, so that we can support our kids, for sure.
I just want to chime in that I appreciate everyone's sensitivity to this topic because we obviously want our community members to feel comfortable reaching out to us, to feel that their comments are welcome to all of us. And I think that's the direction that governance is going with this, is that we want it to be a source of unity and that everyone feels comfortable. No one should feel like they have to filter out certain people. Everyone should feel like their comments are welcome, their concerns are heard. So that's where we're going with it. So I enjoy the dialogue and certainly the sensitivity that everyone has to making sure that everyone's wishes are respected. So thank you.
Okay, so I think this will be a continual conversation unless there's anything else. I think now would probably be a good time to just say, hey, this is what we're doing moving forward. If any emails come to any 1 to 6 of us instead of everybody, if it pertains to board business, if it pertains to something that Tanya and the cabinet need to be aware of, it is now understood that it will be forwarded to all of us, okay? And so I think we all had consensus on that, again, with the students. And as the rest come up, as surely they will, we'll just work through it as a board. But I think that's a good start. And
I think a lot of this particular topic came from our self-assessment and things that we've been really trying to address because, and I'll go back to when you, Mike, and I first joined the board, we knew some things, but until we took some of those MASB classes and different things, and then as we've been here for now the senior people, like things that we want to make sure for the new board members that they're, yeah, so I appreciate it.
yeah, excellent. Thank you, everyone, for the dialogue tonight.
I was like, that was the majority
Okay,
of
was
our
there-
conversation. The other thing that we talked about is of people putting together your bio information, and so we can update the website with the new photos and stuff. And then we saw the survey that came out from the self-reflection from the workshop that we did. And then so we're meeting again in 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. So any suggestions that anybody has? You're shaking your head no. 2 weeks, 3 weeks? You have to look, okay. So we're meeting here in the near future. I know we already saw that, but around this, if you think of something that you want the governance committee to consider, rather wording for the operations procedure manual, or things around that for suggestions, we're definitely just, copy Amanda, send it to Amanda, and then she'll forward it to us. And then that way we're not getting all of us on the OMA stuff. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a follow-up, was there any further discussion on the scheduled public comment? We had touched on that, and then governance was going to talk about it, and I think we were talking more of not implementing the Monday 4 p.m. because it is an arbitrary time that is tied to a policy that we no longer have. And I know Tanya had mentioned that Tuesday would be acceptable for her and Justin. Did you further discuss or no?
No, we talked about it previously in this last meeting. We didn't because we were doing more of our self-reflection of our workshop discussion, the policy that you guys sent over for around the board policies, the email section. I know, and you two keep me honest on this, I think where we left off on that was, the Monday at 4 is what we've had and seems to be okay, unless there is a last minute change like the morning of or something in which if somebody from the community sees it and it's been updated, let's say noon on the day of the meeting, and they want to discuss or speak to that topic, that could definitely, be some flexibility there, right? Aside from that, the night before for all the other stuff, because hopefully by, barring something crazy pops up, our agenda is pretty well firm by Monday, and there's not anything new, because presentations get uploaded, maybe different documentations and stuff, if there's stuff that gets last minute added, or if we have change of agendas and stuff. And the other side too is that just because we have that limitation or the guidance around the scheduled comments, it's still not precluding people from to unscheduled, right? So if they don't get it in there, they're still more than welcome to fill out a card, and we still want to hear from them, and they still get the same 3 minutes to talk about it. And maybe they'll have more to say after we have the discussion at the board table about that particular item or topic. I don't know.
To expand on that, I think the point came back with being able to get them added to the agenda and understand what they were prepared to speak toward, so that the board could also be clued into, okay, I want to take an extra look at that so that I'm prepared when they speak to that agenda item, what they're referencing. So just to have that heads up, not only to get them on the agenda physically, but also for our board preparation purpose. But also if there's changes, yes, just like James said, if there's changes, then obviously that there'd be that discretion to add them.
Okay,
I'm
so,
okay with it, because like, to your point, I mean, if we either add an agenda item or get a presentation update, and they're like, I want to talk about that, then I think there should be some discretion, because obviously we know the biggest thing about scheduled public comment is that it happens before our discussion on whatever point that is. So they have their input, I guess, so.
Being considered when we talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think there has to be some, I guess, discretion, depending on the time. But yes, if I don't know, if it's an agenda item that was set and the documentation was there on Thursday and Tuesday morning, they're asking for a public comment, I think probably you're declining that. I don't know, that's my thoughts.
Yeah. And there's not a policy, so it's not like we're violating. I mean, we have some flexibility with it, right? So that's the recommendation guidance for that around that topic.
yeah, very good. If I'm hearing it correctly, I think that's what we had been doing. I know there was a particular one that there was a disagreement because it was after the time, even though the agenda item had been posted after that. So I think as long as we're on the same page then, that there can be discretion used when it comes to issues like that. Keeping the Monday at 4?
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, anything else, James?
No,
Okay.
I'll let you guys know on that next date of when we have it. I have to look through my calendar here, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. And next up, we have Ann.
I'll make this brief. The Government Relations Committee met a few weeks ago. I wanted to highlight the email that I forwarded with those minutes, as well as that legislative update. I sent that out June 12th. If you go comb back through your emails, you might want to take a look. I highly encourage you, in fact, to take a look at that legislative update, because if you scroll through and hit the towards the end of it, they have included links to some very helpful toolkits, they've labeled them. Medicaid in Schools Toolkit, State K-12 Budget Toolkit, and IDEA Full Funding Toolkit. So in terms of, they have like resolution templates, they have talking points for legislators. So in terms of advocacy on any of those 3 talking points, it's super helpful to take a look at. The legislative update itself obviously changes day to day. So I won't bore you with those details because they're already out of date. But the toolkit's very helpful. That's it.
I have that date, August 8th. Jumping back, August 8th.
Thank you. And thank you, Ann. Yes, those government relations updates are very lengthy, and you are correct, change frequently, so very fun. But if you are so inclined to lift up any of those specific toolkits or resolutions that you would like the board to consider after going through, happy to look through. So thank you. All right, item B, our agenda structure. We had talked a bit about this in how we would like to handle final board comments specifically, and would we like to add a second item on the agenda? For example, we have this survey, we did the self-assessment. I think that our workshop did not leave us enough time to really go through and have a robust dialogue. It was, 2 hours goes by pretty quickly. And so what would be your thoughts on having a leading question on the agenda? For example, tonight being the self-assessment, what area were you most surprised about on our self-assessment? That could have been a thought question for the night. And just to foster more communication and dialogue amongst board members, or alternatively, do we want to keep that at final board comments and get in the habit of really just opening that up to not just what we've done in the last couple of weeks, what schools we've visited, kind of quick updates, more of a dialogue? And so we were just wanting to come to the board and get your thoughts or opinions on moving forward, potentially changing the agenda structure.
I like it. It's kind of an and/or. I'm
Sorry.
What do you like?
I like it.
Context, what do you like?
So, the premise of having a thought-provoking question or a dialogue-sparking statement, or melding of both of those, I think is great, right? Because my feeling is we have an agenda, and it's great, and we go through it, and yep, we're checking, and we're making it happen. But I think what is absolutely missing, from my opinion, is dialogue. Dialogue on topics where we all need to have our opinions outward facing. Dialogue about concerns or thoughts and opinions that are important to each one of us. And I absolutely am behind the idea of a thought-provoking or dialogue-starting aspect of the meeting, right? It doesn't have to be 5 hours, right? But if we can have more dialogue as a board to understand each other, have dialogue about a topic or a concern, inherently, we are going to understand each other better and understand perspectives and opinions and thoughts and get a resolution to a whatever it comes up. It doesn't have to be an issue. It doesn't always have to be an issue. It could be positive. It could be positively an issue. But I think I like the idea. The more dialogue as a board is good for us, and more dialogue as a board going through things that are important to the community and us talking about it is important for the community. Drop the mic.
Maybe I was just kind of spitballing word, like just a section in there under the like Board of Education Matters, like board topic for that kind of the theme or something for that, leaving the final comments at the end, because I think that's important that, you know, any lasting stuff. I mean, we got to close out our meeting and stuff, and it's Robert's Rule of Order. You have your final comments towards the end and stuff. Sometimes we have some, sometimes we don't. But to not scrap that or move that to a different spot. But I do, you know, for a board topic or, you know, I like it. Sarah Beth?
I'm good.
Okay.
I agree. It's a good idea.
I keep talking this way, so I keep making sure I want to.
Sorry. You keep looking at me. Yes, I agree. Because we don't get to socialize together outside of the board meetings, it's difficult to, as you said, get to know each other and let the community know as well, because they're the ones that voted us here. So I agree. I think there should be some dialogue with an opening question.
Okay. I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a really welcome opportunity and will help with a lot of the areas identified in our self-assessment that we need to work on. So obviously with that being at the forefront, we could lead into those questions around the self-assessment, but again, anything else that comes up or anything in particularly that you are concerned about or you want to talk about or you want to ask about or you just want to see us and our opinions on something, you know, that's going on in the community, email them over and Tanya and I can start a list and go through what seems to be important for that month or week. And that way it'll give everybody an opportunity to really provide input and their thoughts around particularly self-assessment at this point, but, yeah?
Yeah,
Any
I mean,
opposition?
I'm not opposing it at all. No, I agree. I'm just trying to, I guess, gather my full opinion on it. Yeah, I mean, because we know that, I mean, I think one of our, actually, our candidates for superintendent said, you know, if there's a vacuum, it's going to be filled with something, whether that's assumptions, whether that's whatever it is, it's going to be filled with something. And so if we don't have those discussions publicly, then assumptions are going to be made, right? And we've seen that. I do believe that we are working towards whatever issue it is. We're really trying to do what's best for the community, what's best for, and we do have, you know, like we do work through our issues, and naturally, I'll admit that I handle issues like I do with the family, right? It's kind of behind, I don't want to say behind closed doors from an OMA standpoint, but right, it's like I don't air my dirty laundry publicly. And it's always been like that. Before, when I was a community member engaged with the board, I would rarely do public comment. It was always just emails back, hey, I saw what you're doing here, right? Like I disagree or agree, or I'd like to see this. But it was, and that's because, I don't know, I feel like it helps flourish working, but at the same time, I need to challenge myself at having these discussions publicly, right? For whatever it is. And I think it's good to start opening those dialogue. I know we started to have some candid conversations at the workshop, and it just kind of, the way it was structured or whatever, it just didn't continue, right, I guess? I mean, there wasn't enough time, I guess, that's part of it. And so I do welcome that. We have had glimpses of that at times. I would say more so with this board here than we have previously. So I appreciate that portion, and anything that prompts that discussion, I think is great. So, yeah.
So just a thought. So we started doing those community conversations, right, and shortening that board meeting, because we did with the thoughts of that being like presentations and things that we hear, and maybe that would be the time during that meeting that we have our board topic that we talk about. I'm trying to, I don't want to extend that meeting, but I'm just trying to think of, like, you know, because sometimes we have a very packed agenda stuff, and to throw it in, I mean, I guess maybe we'll just deem it appropriate for the agenda that's coming up, right? But I was just trying to think of like a way, you know, that, because we have that shortened, or we're doing like board stuff during that.
If the concern is the length of a meeting, I get it. If we even want to start the process for this where we have opportunities that are not during a closed session meeting, right? We do have work we have to get to. Is this work important? Yes, it is. However, in a ranking system, what is the most important? The agenda, the topics at hand, and in conducting our business in a timely fashion. Closed session would extend that. We've ran into a situation where we couldn't get to closed session because of board dialogue, and there's going to be times, and that's okay. But maybe for this, the framework for this, we look at this type of scenario can be without an emergency. We can have it during a meeting that doesn't have a closed session, therefore having some time allotted where it doesn't preclude us from getting to closed session or another agenda item. Like that extension, I'm with you 100%, right? We got to get our job, and closed session's important for a reason. It's there and it's limited, so let's not punt on those unless absolutely necessary. Yeah, maybe there's a finesse that we can find our groove with that, and I think it's going to be a trial by error, right? We find out what works and we modify as we go, as a collective group.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the closed session length stuff. I was just trying to think of, like, because we do, the way we've been doing is like one meeting is kind of like a lot of presentations and stuff where we hear the information and we have time to think about it. Then the next meeting is when we vote on it and we take action on what was presented. That way, if we had any further conversations, or if somebody from the community or whoever has their thoughts and opinions on it. I was just thinking, like, one of those that we do instead of every single meeting. I guess it depends on how many topics we have too, and stuff. I don't know. I'm just, something new we got to keep considering. I like the idea though. Again.
All right. Everybody satisfied? Good? Okay. Well, then we will move forward to item C, our field trip approval. Would anybody like to make a motion for that?
I'll go for it.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, I move to approve the Clear Lake 5th grade field trip as presented.
Support? Sarah Beth, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item, item D, our MASB renewal. We had some discussion last meeting surrounding this, and Mike emailed everybody some preliminary findings that he had surrounding different options for insurance or professional development, things that go along with an MASB membership. So would we like to put the motion on the table and then have discussion? Thank you, James.
Yep, move to approve the MASB 2025 to 2026 renewal as presented.
Support? Ann? Okay, discussion.
So Mike, I want to say thanks for putting that stuff together, of the research of the different options out there for equivalent to MASB. Was there anything that stood out to you in doing that that was better or worse?
What stood out is how ambiguous, the ambiguity within doing research, right? There isn't a clear, for me it's hard, right? Because the way that I work is I want to structure in clear direction as to what options are available, then select from my options. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's one main angle. However, the one angle that I did see, I couldn't find anything on, so I didn't include it.
Okay.
Everything on that one was it was an association that everything online went right back to MASB, so that it negated the whole research. But I guess out of the two Michigan alternatives to MASB, right? Number one was the National School Board Association. There's a lot there, and yes, we get emails already from the NSBA. The only other one that came up that had some information that I put in there was the Michigan Education Justice Coalition, right? I think at the end of the day, we probably are against the time clock to approve where we're at. But what I would implore us to do is continue to have conversations about what benefits Oxford. Are there options for training, for consultative approaches to Oxford as a school board, as a district, as well as connections to insurance, which is also in here as well. There are what seems to be quite a list of potential options for insurance agencies. I don't have an overwhelming warm feeling about either one of our associations, whether it comes MASB or SETSEG. I really truly feel, my opinion is that we should have conversations about, before we stamp this next year, what is the true honest options for us? Are we happy with what we have? Because if you're not happy with Netflix, you go to Peacock. If you're not happy with Peacock, you go to another one.
Or you get all three.
Or, you know what, maybe we have to. And
Right.
maybe there's a world where that is. And
So
my wife has insurance and I have insurance, and you play off what benefits depending on what coverage you need. But I think the opportunity, here's some information that wasn't previously provided. Is it all encompassing? It's pretty tough to pull all this together.
So on the insurance front, though, just whether we're a member of MASB or not, that doesn't preclude us on the insurance stuff. That's a totally separate topic, not for this. So, and then
No, you have to be an MASB member to have SETSEG insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if we were to opt out of it, let's say turn this down, then now essentially kill our insurance policy, is what I'm understanding. Correct?
You would have 1 year.
Have 1 year. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to start off our own. And then the National School Board Association, MASB is already part of that.
Yeah.
So we have those benefits with them and stuff. And I'll say for my time on the board, not only the training and the classes that they offer for new board members and getting up to speed, they've done our evaluation training that's mandated by law, that's research-based. There's other ones that are out there and stuff. So I think I'm with you, like, see what's out there. It was nice to, when I was looking through this and seeing the different things, but not a clear cut. It's kind of the options are limited. And so,
That is unfortunate. There's no doubt about it, right? It's not, there aren't a whole host of options for us to move away from MASB. And my question in the previous meeting about it is merely, do we have options? We now have some idea of what potential options there are. Do they benefit Oxford? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. That's for us to decide. And just some of the things that sparked my concern or my question about it in the first place, I haven't felt overwhelmingly just fired up about some of the responses we've got in the support. I mean, the guidance that we've had, yeah, I mean, obviously I took the training. Yep, the gentleman that came from MASB that did he was fantastic. Our last experience, in my opinion, wasn't so fantastic. Are you going to have that everywhere? Yeah, some things I don't like on Peacock, and I go to Netflix, for example. And I'm not trying to trivialize, so don't hang me, Emperor. But as an example, you have options. And I would like to see if we truly have options that weren't previously researched or identified that would maybe be enlightening. And you know what? And if this was a waste of time and we don't have options, I am happily accepting no points for this conversation and making everyone else around us waste time. That's on me, and I'll buy coffee on that one. So,
no, I think you brought up a good point of, what other options are out there, and I think, as of right now, not seeing really many other options and stuff. As far as the training and stuff goes, like, we're not restricted or confined to just MASB, so I think ways that we can supplement board training for other things might be prudent of us to look at as well.
That's a great idea. Trialing, without being a member, maybe there's trials.
Yeah.
And of course, from a sales perspective, their interest would be, let Oxford try it before you buy it.
Yeah,
that could be an angle to take.
So if you don't mind me sharing, Mike, so John, who came in and did the 2 workshops, he was not with MASB. So we have
Good to
that as an option
Yep.
to bring additional people in. But we went with MASB because that was their self-reflection tool. So the hope was that they would have a lot of insight, could share some feedback, and you saw how that worked out. So we'll just be more intentional in the future with those types of things.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I think at this juncture, we should probably move forward with it, but over the next year, I think it would be prudent of us to start looking at options. I know that there are plenty of outside training and professional growth opportunities that we can start looking around, start sampling. We pay for on top of the membership, we pay for all of the MASB training anyway. So if we don't pay for that and try something new and see how we like it, maybe get familiar with other tools. I know we weren't all 100% satisfied with both our board tool and the superintendent tool. And so just putting the feelers out, seeing over the next year where we'd like to go, and if at the end of the year we feel that MASB we say, hey, yeah, they've been worth the membership fee, and we might as well keep them. Or we've found these great alternatives, and we prefer to go in that direction.
Game on. Yeah, it makes. 100%. Yeah, I wasn't able to say, guys, this is where we need to go.
Right.
I do appreciate all the research.
I wish.
Though. It was fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, just so aside from the motion that we have on there, though, like afterwards, we need to probably figure out like a subcommittee of people, like superintendent search, right? Of people that are willing to do additional legwork for maybe professional development courses, or start looking at our options. And maybe not today, but think about it, I think as board members, of who would be interested in taking on that, because that's something above and beyond what our committees are and other things. But I think that would be important. So we have a group of people tasked with doing it, and then they come back and report back to the board. And to the sales pitch stuff, maybe if we find one, reach out and be like, hey, we'd like for you to come do a presentation of why we should be part of your membership versus what we currently have, and stuff. And
I like it.
I don't want to say RFP, but put it out there. Like,
I like it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be part of that.
there's one.
Shane's too.
When you're not here, you just.
Shane
Great
is
job,
watching
Shane.
from home.
Go
Thank
green.
you. All right. Any further discussion on that topic? We do have motion on the table, so all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Item E, we have our science curriculum. There was a quick update that I'm sure you've all seen in the board packet that there was a bit of a cost savings on that one, so great job, Anita. She's not here, but thank you. So would somebody like to make a motion on that? James, thank you.
I move to approve the elementary science curricula as presented.
Support? Mike Whitney, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item F, as you all know, we had a closed session to form our superintendent evaluation. It was great discussion and dialogue, and I appreciate all of those who came prepared and really contributed. So would anybody like to make a motion? James, thank you.
I'll just keep it rolling tonight.
Sounds good.
Move to approve the superintendent evaluation as presented.
Support? Sarah Beth, thank you. Discussion?
I think the only comment I had, as I continue to think about this, kind of goes back to what we just talked about in regards to MASB and training and assessments and all of those type of things. I think we look at that, right? So I don't think there was anything overarchingly wrong with it, but I think in my professional experience, like what I do for my job, I'm measured on actual tangible things, and I'm not saying that you weren't, so this is a general statement, but having a little bit more when it comes to measurables or performance evaluations, if it doesn't feel like any of the evaluations I've ever received when it comes to, did you approve this? What was your sales tools? What was your communication? What was your penetration into 4 OEMs? Those type of things. I'm not saying it was or wasn't. It didn't feel like if I was getting assessed, that was my only opinion, right?
You're speaking to the tool itself, the
Yeah,
rubric?
yeah,
Okay.
the tool itself
Yeah.
seemed,
Agreed.
again, and this isn't right or wrong, my opinion is it seems really like generic in questions and broad picture questions versus specifics. Do you like the color yellow? Yes. Do you like the color maize? Yes. I'm not saying that, I know that's really probably poor, but it just felt like we could probably have a little bit more, I don't know the necessarily term, it just didn't feel as robust as what I'm used to on my daily life.
So,
But we did obviously collectively go through it. We had dialogue. It was measurement tools. We did have the backing, which was fantastic, which is what you would get if you were to do a self-assessment in the corporate world, right, where I come from, and I think similarly, right? It just, maybe I'm off, but it just, maybe the tool itself could help us with additional questions or thoughts
So-
that would be measurements.
I think we looked at this, we talked about this, Amanda, keep me honest, like, there's only a couple tools because it's gotta be research-based
Yep.
and approved by the state.
Okay.
If I'm speaking correctly on that, and so we're kind of stuck with one or the other. Am I
Yes
right
and
in
no.
that?
The MDE has one. I haven't looked fully through it yet, but that's how we,
Yeah.
as we were talking about MASB, that came up, and I know MDE has one. And the law does specifically say that there is room for adjustment. So you could make it district-specific, but it still has to follow the law, which again is something that
I think the law part said it
subcommittee,
had to
this
be
might be a
research-based, though.
great, what's that?
I
Oh,
said-
yes, it does say research-based.
Yeah, so that, I think that's where, when we started looking at like customizing, like we'd have to pay to research an evaluation tool or have it research-based.
Well, from my
or-
understanding, you can use the framework of
Okay.
MDE or MASB. I'm
Okay.
sure there's probably a couple other options out there. You
committee
have
that
to
you-
use the framework and you are able to make adjustments. And so with that, I think the subcommittee was an excellent idea, and maybe that is something we push onto there too.
And I think
Because I would
you
agree
just
the
nailed the
rubric is-
whole
I
thing on that.
I just did.
You just nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, you nailed it.
Oh,
We're
it was
stuck
intentional.
with using this. I don't want us to be stuck in anything, right? And again, I'm not saying it's overarchingly good or bad, just a general statement that,
Yeah.
right, for an assessment of such a leader that we have for our community, you know,
And so,
what options do we have? Was this kind of the same thing as like what we've been using forever?
so no, it's
I don't
not.
know.
This is brand new because before we had 4 categories. So some of the things that Mike and Amanda kind of feel is that third category of there was like effective and then highly effective. So they took some of those wordings from the highly effective and just put it in the effective side. So you almost took 2 columns or 2 categories, mashed them together, and said that's effective. And so when I was going through it, I was like, well, yeah, but no, but I remember this being on the other side of the tool. So
We had some questions, like, and there is a little bit, again, definitive
Yeah.
seems more valid to me than, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, we owe it to our superintendent to be just and have thorough, thoughtful. And you did a fantastic job in all your responses as to why and what, that's not the question. Generally stating, 1, I don't want to be stuck. 2, why even have a chance to be, well, some of these you could be and some of these you could be either one of them. Well, everybody wants the best, right? So is the tool enough to say either definitive you're the best or definitive maybe you're not quite there but you're definitely on track? I think that's a great angle to take, and the committee that we're going to form later on, we'll work through that.
I also think now that we're renewing our MASB stuff, we give very candid, honest, open feedback to them of their tool. This is what we liked, this is what didn't work, and how, because, being that it's their tool that we're using, who knows what feedback they've gotten, but it's crucial to give it back, right? We can only get better with feedback. And I think that would be helpful too.
Yeah, because I think the most valuable part of those were the actual discussions and the comments we made within it. I mean, the rubric in its own right, I do feel it's gotten weaker for sure. And it was even in previous years, it was still not a real powerful for change, right? I guess. I do really appreciate the process here, though. I appreciate Tanya using it as, like, here's the metrics, this is what I'm being graded on, and this is what I've done, right? Not a, well, I was focused here, so therefore give me some grace here, or that kind of thing. We didn't really have that issue, I'll say. Right? It was this is what the expectation is, this is what I've done, and we've walked through it. Again, I think in general it's not the strongest tool, so I agree with that portion, but we can make it in at least the comments, I guess we can make it clear what our expectations are, right? I don't know, but I agree. If we can investigate some, I'm open, because I don't like just this is how it's always been, or these are the only 2 options, or whatever. I mean, that seems to be where we're at. But if we have other options, that'd be great.
I agree with the sentiment that the tool definitely could be better. So whether we want to start with giving feedback, but also look for options, that makes sense to me. And I just want to applaud Tanya for her excellent work in tracking all of that information and providing that in such a clear and very impressive amount of information for us. So that was I opened it up and I was like, whoa, this is going to take a while to go through. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I would like to add that we need to figure out a way to put her sense of humor in that, because she has some really good pranks she's pulled and shared with the governance committee. So that, I think, should be part of her personality. That's what I love about her being here, is because she has trauma experience. but she makes us laugh.
Thank you. I definitely agree that the artifacts in the evaluation were very robust, and there were so many. And again, I think that also speaks to the fact, though, that the rubric is pretty flawed. And so, between a rock and a hard place, you did great. And then, of course, I do not like how we have gone from the 4 rating to the 3, like you mentioned earlier, James. And I think that also just kind of speaks to the fact that we have legislators making these rules that aren't really tied closely to the public education system. So there is that, and that has definitely been a challenge this year. But that might be something, if we have the ear, maybe in a government relations committee meeting, or if we talk to our OCSBA reps, we can maybe let them know that our feedback this year was not great on that change. So thank you, everyone, for that. And we do have motion on the floor, so unless there's any other discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item G. Would you like me to speak to this, or did you want to? Okay.
So I just put it out there for consideration. Part of my contract says that if I can request a 1-year extension to my contract by the end of June. So I just put it out there for consideration. My hope is that I will be considered to extend my contract, because my goal is to be here bare minimum to see the strategic plan through. And so currently I have a 3-year contract. The strategic plan is 5 years. We can do the math. So I'm short a couple years. So I just wanted to put the request out there for your consideration. I did recommend to Amanda I would like all board members here before we actually consider it, because that's really important to me, that everybody has a chance to have discussion, and that it's a collective decision.
Any discussion surrounding that? Okay, I did speak with Tanya earlier, just a couple housekeeping things. If you look at her previous contract, it would just be a continuation of that with the same 5% increase and all of the provisions staying the same. So we did discuss that. But outside of that, were there additional questions? No? Okay, well, we have some time. Our next meeting's not until the end of July, so if there are any further discussion, feel free to email Tanya and ask some questions pertaining to that. Otherwise, we will hope that we have a full board seated at the end of July and go ahead and vote on it. All right. Our next item, the strategic plan. I think we have a host of presenters, correct?
All right.
All right, welcome.
So,
Sorry we've kept you.
no. Again, I'm super excited, very, very proud of the work of my team. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'll start it off just, again, giving a general overview. The board has many documents. We haven't made all of them public because we're still working on them, but I wanted you to have as much information as possible. So we're gonna, again, I'll review the strategic plan components. We've read through the vision, mission, and core values. And then we're gonna get into the goals. So each team member will speak to their goal. They'll speak to their aligned actions, give some insight into those, as well as strategies and possible metrics that we'll use to monitor those things. And then Gary will, at the end, talk about the metrics as well as the dashboard, which we're super excited about. So again, the structure of the strategic plan, vision, mission, core values. We talked about those earlier. And then strategic goals, which each of the team members will speak to, their aligned actions, and their measures. So we talked about our vision and mission already. We did define these core values more broadly. This was a lot of input from our community and staff members. So you'll see the definitions there. And we'll jump right into goal 1. So that's Christy.
All right, thank you. So I have the pleasure of presenting Goal 1, which is safe, supportive, and connected schools. So the goal is strengthen a culture of safety, support, and connection across our schools to foster an increased sense of belonging. So that's our main goal, number 1. And then for each goal, there's aligned actions, and the aligned actions are basically our highest priority items that we're going to try to tackle in order to achieve these goals. So for goal 1, we have 1.1, which is to increase student psychological safety and well-being by enhancing trauma-informed student support systems and mechanisms that use comprehensive data reviews. So that's what's up on the screen. I'll talk just a second about some of the strategies, and then more of this will be coming in further documentation. So some of the strategies for 1.1, establish interdisciplinary teams to analyze data, build staff capacity, elevate student voice and belonging, and evaluate data to enhance trauma-informed practices. And this ties into the Easter SEALs TRSIA data Dr. Milligan mentioned earlier, and that's included in there where we will evaluate that and make a plan of action. 1.2 is to strengthen parent engagement and provide clear, consistent, and inclusive communication. We've already made some progress in this area. There's obviously a lot more work to do, and the strategies here include implementing consistent, user-friendly communication systems that highlight parent voice, strengthen engagement, and enhance access to timely, relevant information. 1.3, increase consistency of implementation of a DK through 12 school-wide behavior response management program to ensure fair and equitable discipline practices across all schools. So this is something that's come up in the school quality surveys throughout the years. Some strategies would be to develop clear protocols, consistent data tools, and role-specific training, including in restorative practices, to ensure cohesive and effective behavior management across all schools. And goal 2.
All right, I have the honor and privilege of presenting Goal 2, so a lot of the academic work. Goal 2 is knowledgeable, critical thinkers, and communicators. We want to prepare our students to be knowledgeable and creative critical thinkers who can communicate and collaborate effectively. Our aligned actions, 2.1, we aim to define, develop, implement, and evaluate an Oxford Community Schools instructional framework that improves student English language arts and mathematics outcomes. A strategy overview could be develop and implement an OCS instructional framework with ongoing learning and discipline-specific literacy practices. So that's one strategy. 2.2, strengthen our multi-tiered systems of support, so otherwise known as MTSS, by enhancing data-informed practices that promote student success, well-being, and safety. Another strategy we are considering and really are interested in developing further is foster supportive learning with strong relationships, targeted secondary supports, 9th grade transitions, and data-driven collaboration. 2.3 is increase student access to learning pathways and career-ready options. We heard a lot about this in our input meetings. A strategy is create inclusive, personalized learning by integrating career pathways, community partnerships, trauma-informed practices, and flexible student-centered systems. Another one is define the key performance indicators, the KPIs, aligned with future career trends and equipped educators to support students through targeted training. 2.4 is revise, develop, and implement the Portrait of a Graduate, the POG, to reflect current and future workforce and societal needs. And we all know that in this ever-changing landscape, it's going to be super important in the next few years to tackle that as well. So goal 2. 3, sorry, 3.
Thank you, Janet. I am presenting this evening on Goal 3, Empowered and Engaged Team. I want to reiterate what Dr. Milligan said. The feedback we received from the board, our staff, and our community was so valuable as we worked through this process and really refined our information. So we have cultivate an engaged and growth-oriented team dedicated to our district mission. I really just want to point out too that this goal aligns so well with our core values. And our aligned actions include 3.1, strengthen district-wide systems that support staff wellness and ensure competitive compensation, positioning the district as an employer of choice to sustain optimal staffing levels. Strategies for this include a benefits task force. I know I mentioned this previously to the board. This is something we're really excited about to bring our stakeholders together from all of the different collective bargaining groups, the at-will groups, and really work through a task force that evaluates benefits, at least twice a year, and we are empowering our people with the knowledge to share that with their colleagues. We will engage in strategic collective bargaining. As you are all well aware, that work has been started and will be settled for a few years, but it's always ongoing that we're measuring the market and continuing to make sure we're offering the very best to our staff. We will be using employee surveys to guide workplace improvements, empowering our wellness committee to promote overall staff well-being. We had a meeting this afternoon, as a matter of fact, to outline 4 initiatives for the 25-26 school year. So really excited about that work. 3.2 addresses establishing a comprehensive professional growth system for all staff that fosters continuous learning, mentorship, and role-specific support that includes and emphasizes safety protocols and procedures. And we spoke about this at the board workshop. We're very excited to introduce a committee, a professional learning calendar that addresses PD opportunities for all staff, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, the list goes on, bus drivers, bus monitors. But we're gonna have that. In addition, having networking opportunities for these groups. For example, paraprofessionals meeting after school or over Zoom to network and have time to work with their colleagues, maybe have a micro-learning opportunity at the beginning, but really emphasizing that all staff at Oxford schools are getting professional development to grow their skills, their knowledge, and that will also impact their sense of belonging here at the district and their sense of growth, which is very important in their careers. Another thing that we are going to use as a strategy are just feedback systems to make sure that we're getting feedback from our staff and recognition to make sure staff are being recognized. We're working with Gary on the metrics. You know, I've presented data before to you, typically in January, on turnover. So we'll continue to track that and drill down specifically by our groups. So that's goal 3.
Good evening. I get the honor also of presenting Goal 4, the strategic title of it being Innovative Sustainable Systems and Structures. More focused goal would be enhanced facilities, operation systems to improve safety, efficiency, and long-term sustainability. There are 4 aligned strategies, aligned actions. 4.1, access and address infrastructure, accessibility and space utilization needs to ensure equitable access to high-quality, sustainable learning environments across all facilities. A potential strategy for that would be setting standards as to what each facility should have the capability of doing, using that set of standards to assess the facilities on a district-wide basis, and use that information as a guide to develop a comprehensive master plan for each campus following that set of standards. 4.2 is evaluate security infrastructure for efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability to support a culture of safety. A potential strategic overview for that would be implement a regular review cycle for the security systems, expand safety training through a train-the-trainer model, and define criteria to evaluate the effectiveness of the safety practices. 4.3 is advanced district technology, meaning hardware, software, and cybersecurity and networks as a whole, to enhance instructional effectiveness and operational efficiency for the district. A strategy thought for that would be implement tiered tech training, develop a device refresh strategy that focuses on a 5-year cycle review, use annual assessments, and strengthen cybersecurity. And for 4.4, enhance operational systems by streaming resource management and implementing fiscally responsible strategies that promote efficiency, sustainability, and long-term infrastructure. And when we were working on writing that one, it seemed much shorter than reading that out loud. So it's, one of the thoughts behind that, or a potential strategy, is improving collaboration, really from an organizational point of view. There's some room and opportunity for improvement for organization-wide approaches to certain procurement approaches, and for example, centralized resources, do an audit of our operating policies annually to really see what's current, what needs to be changed, reflecting the times, and establish clear, for example, establishing clear requests for proposal criteria depending upon certain situations. And with that, I will turn it over to Gary for a, I have a goal, sorry. Thank you.
And I have not presented in front of you in probably over a year. And so again, just so you know, I am Gary Van Staveren, and it's nice to be here with you again this evening. I'm going to talk about, we've talked about the goals and then the aligned actions and then strategies, but how are we going to measure all of this? What's that going to look like? And then how transparent are we going to be in sharing that with you and with the public? And that's where the progress monitoring and reporting comes in. So we do plan to have quarterly updates for you. And then we're also going to be providing an interactive data dashboard on the website. And that is extremely exciting because you're going to be able to, and there's kind of a little screen capture right there, but you're going to be able to hover your cursor right over the aligned action, the strategy, the metrics, and you're going to be able to see how we are progressing towards that measure. And then you're going to be able to, as you hover your cursor over it, it's going to pop out, and then you can click on it and drill deeper and get more information as well. So again, we're going to be updating that quarterly, but then we're also going to be putting the spreadsheet of all of our metrics. That spreadsheet is going to be downloadable. That's also going to be accessible on the website as well. So you'll have access to all of that. And so our team already has talked about some different strategies for these aligned actions. And so here are some other examples. And so you see on the top row, you're going to see sample measures. And again, these are tentative. And then underneath that, you're going to see some sample strategies that are tentative. So for example, and I'm not going to read each of them, but let's say we go all the way to the right. Across the top, you'll see 4.1, which is John's goal and Christie's goal. And you'll see percentage of schools meeting district-defined criteria for physical condition of all facilities. That's a metric. That's something that we're going to measure and provide that data out to you. That aligns with the strategy directly underneath that, which is to establish measurable standards to assess infrastructure, safety, accessibility, space, and facility improvement needs throughout the district. Again, like John said, kind of a word, a mouthful, but this is extremely important information. And again, we're going to be sharing this with you quarterly. So with that, I think that might be the last slide. Thank you. Is this where we ask for questions? Or is this more of a presentation?
I mean, I know we talked in the workshop, but
yeah.
I mean, thank you for all the work that's gone into these. I appreciate putting the feedback that we gave specifically at the workshop, integrating what we could into it directly, and I just appreciate the work that's been gone in for you and your team.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been such an impressive process to get to be a small part of and watch the excitement grow from not only Tanya empowering her team to really lift this up and take this on. It's just been really impressive to be a part of, and to see this final product is so exciting. And the dashboard that Tanya has been talking about for the whole year has been, this is really exciting. So thank everyone that has had big and small part of this, and the community as well. This is going to be really exciting to have as a board to lead us forward. Thank you.
I will echo that. It has been a great pleasure to be part of this process along with all of you, and the way that you have taken feedback and ran with it and made it better. It has been very impressive. I am most excited about the metrics and the dashboard, and I cannot wait to see those. And I think it is very obvious that a lot of thought was put into this, and I just appreciate all of your work, all of our community, fellow board members, Tanya, everybody involved. Truly, it will be a very needed path moving forward for the board. I am very excited to align all of our decisions with our new strategic plan, and so thank you for the roadmap and everything you've done. Next up, we have a couple of bargaining. Oh, we haven't. Well, of course, we went through all of that and didn't actually officially do it. I'm sorry about that. Who would like the honors of this motion? I'll take it. Move to approve the strategic plan as presented. Support. Mike Whitney, thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you again. Can't believe I almost forgot the vote on that. I'm sorry. Now we'll move into the bargaining agreements. Would anybody like to make the first motion? Sarah Beth, sure.
I move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Oxford Community Schools and the Oxford Educational Support Personnel Association as presented.
Support. James, thank you. Any discussion? Again, great work. Our HR and union and everybody involved in making these agreements go very smoothly for us, so thank you.
And I am encouraged by the feedback that we've gotten in general, and I think it makes us more competitive. So I certainly appreciate that for our children. And yeah, just a great job.
Anyone else? All right, roll call, James?
Yep, roll call vote. I need yes or no when I call your name. Capajorni?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Gibson is absent. Summers, yes. Atchison?
Yes.
Aldred?
Yes.
McDonough?
Yes. All right. Next one. Thanks. Mike?
Move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Oxford Community Schools and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees as presented.
Support. Ann, thank you. Discussion? All right, James, roll call?
Yep, roll call vote. Need yes or no when I call your name. Aldred?
Yes.
Capajorni?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Gibson, absent. Summers? Yes. Atchison?
Yes.
McDonough?
Yes. And next one. Mike Whitney, thank you.
Move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Oxford Community Schools and Oxford Administrators Association as presented.
Support. Mike Aldred, thank you. Discussion? James?
Yep, roll call vote. Need yes after I call you, yes or no after I call your name. Atchison?
Yes.
Aldred?
Yes.
Capajorni?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Gibson, absent. Summers, yes. McDonough?
Yes. All right, perfect. Moving into item L, we have a recommendation for action to approve the resolution. This was in your board packet relating to the way that there was an agreement relating to the way that salaries are identified for retirement, and we've actually had those of us older board members have had experience with this, so it's a little closer to home. But unless there are any questions on this, I would recommend that we make a motion to approve this. I will. I was waiting for if there were any questions, okay, about the document itself. Move to approve the settlement of Batista versus Office of Retirement Services resolution as presented. All right, Mike Whitney takes it. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item number 7. We have our final budget amendment approval. John, are you speaking to this first before we?
If I give you just a summary review of what Courtney presented last meeting, if you'd like.
Sure.
Just from a revenue budget point of view, this is the final amendment for the current year we're in. The revenue, $104,766,008. The expenditures, $104,644,023. A budget surplus projected at $121,985, with a budgeted ending fund balance of $17,315,523. In terms of the attachments that went to the board, I'd be happy to answer any other questions or based on or appropriate for the final amendment.
Any questions on the 2024-2025 budget? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Second.
Mike Whitney?
Move to approve the fiscal year 2024 and 2025 final amendment of resolution as presented.
Support. Mike Aldred, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B, our technology bid approval.
We do have one bid request tonight. It's for the procurement of some equipment for this coming school year. I apologize for the timing on it. The timing in which we got some final pricing information in relative to our available board meetings, relative to a lead time and getting the equipment ready for next year, kind of puts us on the spot for this meeting. But as a quick overview, what's actually in the bid award, it's 1,300 Chromebooks for student devices, 1,000 of which are targeted for the middle school. Along with those middle school items, there's a 2-year insurance attachment of $35 a year. The strategy for the middle school students will be to a building-wide refresh where incoming 6th graders, existing 7th graders will get devices with insurance on them. They will all get new devices those 2 years, or excuse me, those 3 years worth of equipment will all have these 2-year programs on them. Our history from a technical damage and repair point of view, the middle schoolers are the toughest on the equipment, so we got pretty good pricing in terms of an approach to put some insurance on that grouping. So the idea being the machines, as we have outgoing graduating 8th graders, everybody rolls back those roll back down to the incoming 6th graders. So by the time we get 2 to 3 years through, if there's a problem with the units, they're more than likely covered completely by insurance. Beyond that time frame, if there's a material problem with them based on the value of each machine, it's probably a sell it for scrap and then look at replacing the machine itself. So that's the strategy at the middle school piece. The other 300 Chromebooks are associated with our OVA students in terms of a scheduled replacements process. And to kind of elaborate on that too, that there was a question from a board member earlier about the technology side of replacement schedules and those kinds of things. That's going to be actually part of the strategic plan process and some of the metric pieces there, so it kind of feeds right into that, and it's in process, and Matt's working on things in that regard too, in terms of bringing those forward. But also in the package, the bid request is 96 HP Z towers and 32 monitors to be used in our OMS STEM rooms. The equipment in those rooms are roughly on the 10-year-old side and desperately need replacing, so we're going to knock out those 2 STEM rooms as well, and then pick up 100 Surface Go unit for our OSEC students. And I'd mentioned estimated lead times are really the driver, and some of the pricing was driving the reason why we're coming to the bid meeting and requesting approval at the same meeting, which I understand is not the norm. So, but the pricing related to the equipment in the end, the pricings are coming off 2 different cooperative contracts. One is the REMC contract for Intercom. One is its acronym is TIPS. That information was also included in your board pack, a little bit about what TIPS is. And It's focused on an educational pricing process as well. So, the cost for the Chromebooks of $536,180. The cost for the HP STEM room towers and monitors, $192,314. Funding will be coming out of the general fund that's been incorporated in this budget, which is coming up here in a couple of agenda items. So it's a recommendation of administration that the Board of Education authorize the administration to purchase devices from Tafara LLC for $536,180 and Intercom for $192,314 for a total of $728,494 authorization. Any questions?
So on the middle school ones, we're doing a full hardware refresh?
Yep.
Are we being assigned the Chromebooks, so the sixth graders will keep the same laptop for all 3 years that they're in middle school?
It's my understanding that, as Matt's well, nodding yes in the audience, yeah, they'll go with them through the grades.
Okay.
And then when they graduate, they'll rotate back out.
So we're going back to that because that was the agreement or the understanding a couple years ago, and then last school year kind of got totally changed. So I want to.
It's my understanding that there was looking at a different process changed last year, and it didn't work out as the pilot had hoped it would. And I'm just speculating on some of the things that I've learned.
And then, are we doing any kind of outer casing or anything for these Chromebooks, like what are on the high school Chromebooks as a protective case?
Not at the plant right now. We tested these, and we have unlimited replacement of these devices at no charge. And they gave us a demo unit. We have dropped it from head height, waist height, and the device opened like this from waist height and dropped it, and it did not break.
Okay. I just, having a middle schooler myself, when you say that they're pretty rough on it, I had some discussions with him on things. So, yeah, I know the cases are nice and stuff. The assignment for them to be with them all 3 years, I think, adds a little bit of ownership and responsibility to them, because the mindset of a lot of his co-students, friends is, well, what does it matter? I had a really nice one. They took it away and gave me this crappy one with the trackpad doesn't work, and I don't care. So I like going back to that where, they have it. Are we still offering insurance or asking for parents to do that? Or because part of this deal is that unlimited replacement, we don't need to worry about that anymore?
We are still going to pursue a service contract. It's not considered insurance, but a service contract is something I'm going to be rewriting this summer. I talked to Thrun about how that wording should go, and we're going to provide that to the students.
And will that follow the device through all 3 years, or is it a renewal every?
Yearly renewal.
Okay. Do we know what the cost is by chance?
Not at this point. I'm going to probably go with similar things from previous years. It was at least $25, Gary, can you remind me? And $70 for the laptop. 75.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
So I guess the only thought I've got looking at this is, are we working towards a management style for technology that is more palatable versus large sums coming out of a fund or anything? Because this is quite a bit. I'm wondering if once we get technology and facilities, we're going to have that plan to where we can chip away at it in smaller pieces, which is a more manageable plan than wait 10 years and then we have no choice. We have to do it now.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. It's actually, like it was mentioned earlier, it's going to be part of the strategic plan. One of the strategies for it is develop a standardized approach to a refresh cycle. The ideal cycle probably being on a 5-year basis, I think we were talking through before. That said, I do put the disclaimer in, if there's a issue with the state funding, 5-year cycles can get stretched out to 6 and those kinds of things, but the goal is to have an active forward plan in place that addresses management of technology within the district. And that's laptops, infrastructural technology, anything technology world.
Anyone else? I know there were some questions in the Q&A. We've all had some tonight. We don't necessarily have the time if we would like this implemented ahead of the school year. So if anybody would be comfortable. Thank you.
Yep, move to approve the technology bid approval as presented.
Support. Sarah Beth, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. And now you have a presentation for us for the 25-26 budget?
Yeah, I promise the 50 slides in this deck will go quick. No, I'm just kidding about that part. But we are treating this as a second reading and approval for the adopted budget. Just as a refresher, the workshop process and subsequent draft work through the truth and taxation piece is treated like the first reading. So this is what we're actually putting forward to the board and requesting your approval on. And in your board packets, there's the actual PowerPoint presentation here. There's the executive summary write-up addressing the budget. Contained in there is a lot of different assumption information and things that actually used to build the budget. And then there's a very long resolution document that's different than the amendments ones. So if you've got any questions on that, I'd be more than happy to address that as well. But with that said, let's get started. This is a snapshot of the general fund itself. Within the budget appropriation request for the adopted will be all our budgets. And I touched on that on the ending slides too. So very hard to read. So in terms of where we're really at, this one's starting a fund balance surplus, or excuse me, an operating surplus of $213,660. It's the format that we'll be using forward as well, to where you see on the far right-hand column, the itemized alphabetical letters correspond to individual identification or write-ups for some changes that are embedded in there that'll be within the pages of the documents that's attached to the board book. I do not have that up here, but from a general fund highlight point of view, some of the bigger picture things, the revenues and transfers in total are totaling $108,911,763. The expenditures and transfer outside of the equation is the $108,698,104. And I like to position this kind of a thing to remind that there's really what we refer to as a general fund. It's really two. It's a revenue fund, an expenditure, revenue budget, and expenditure budget that comprise the fund's operations. So the operating surplus again is $213,660. That would move our projected fund balance to be $17,529,183. The section 147C1 and 2 just as a bigger ticket item within the budgets. The state aid pass-through revenue expenditures in this budget in the adopted form are the same as that are in the final amended budget of the current year. That information will be updated through the amendment process. That information usually is not really known until July or August, when our state comes around and gets its budget passed, and that would be explained, the big block red letters disclaimer about the state legislature hasn't passed its school aid budget. This one's built on the known up to current date information that we have today. That said, the year we're just finishing out now, we started the year in the same mode. What the state actually passed had a whole lot of difference in it. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but I got the disclaimer there anyway, just in case. So from a revenue assumption point of view, we're expecting for an investment rate of return still in the 4% range, which is pretty healthy, especially compared to the last 10 years. It's probably more historically where it typically has been. So 25 years ago would have been closer to 4 versus the 0.5% of the recent era we just got through. Our fee-based revenue, we're expecting to grow greater than 10%. We're making a focus, and that's part of our strategic plan too, as well as to build up our fee-based programs, such as use of the pool by community groups and or the community at large, and those kinds of things to increase that base. The foundation allowance in this proposed budget is based on a $392 per pupil foundation allowance increase. There has been a lot of talk in all three branches of the state government. They all seem to like the $10,000 per pupil foundation allowance, the nice round numbers approach. I did just hear yesterday that some of that may tick up a few dollars from that number, which would be good. The net student enrollment that we used to build this budget is increased by a net 180. So they're getting us to a budgeted 7,611 total FTE for the district. Now, when I say total FTE, those are full-time equivalent students. That's really probably 12,000 head count kids. The difference being, we may have a certain child taking only 2 of their 6 classes a day in front of our staff on some of our shared time service type programming. So that's 2 head count, but actually it ends up being about a 0.4 FTE. So that's why there's a difference when we talk head count versus full-time equivalent. So and the state uses a weighting model for how it comes up with that number as well. So the kid counts, the student counts as of October of 25, this coming October, that'll be weighted at 90%, and then the February that's already behind us, the student count that occurred then, that'll be weighted at 10%. Those 2 numbers added together will produce the 7611 that we're budgeting on. I can guarantee it won't be 7611. It'll be hopefully within a very tight range of that from our forecasting, but again, because it's a forecast, it's rarely ever going to land on that exact number. But so the categorical and grant revenues are increased modestly throughout the fund. So whenever the grants and categoricals change, there's a revenue change and a corresponding expenditure change, much like the 147C pass-through money the state passes through all the public districts. Which that really means is there's a lot of little changes through pretty much every operating department in the district because of those types of changes. The ISD and other source revenue, it's budgeted to decline by about $1.5 million relative to this year's final amendment. The lion's share changes are the funding we get through Oakland Schools, the pass-through P18 funding. That the model that they use to identify which districts get how much, it's a model that from year to year can change quite a bit. If a larger district expands their special needs costs and a material amount, it can pick up a big chunk for the subsequent year because they're always using 1-year-old or the prior year's cost reports. So this year we declined relative to the prior year. Next year we'll probably pick a big piece of that right back up. There's a lot of fluctuation in that. And then also in this year's budget, there's about $1 million of one-time insurance proceeds that are, there's a revenue recognizing that and an expenditure recognizing that amount. So those expenditures are hitting several different line items as well. So there's a lot of movement in that respect. And operating transfers in from the community service and food service funds are total $275,000. That's basically an indirect charge that those funds pay back to the general fund for payroll, HR, things like that. That's all of their staff are part of. So major expenditure assumptions, you just went through. All the union groups are settled, so that information is pretty well known. The adopted budget incorporates the estimated changes relative to the contracts that you just did pass, as well as the teachers a meeting ago. Staff cost changes also. A big driver on them is retirements, terminations, and not necessarily terminations for something not good. Lots of teachers and lots of personnel do change jobs. So between retirements and job changing and new hires and program growth, meaning we may be hiring net new teachers, if it overgrows to where we're targeting, we'll probably pick up a couple of teachers in there. So that's all incorporated into the expenditure side of it too, and it has how it impacts the overall wage base of the budget, which gets to the next bullet point of the wage base year-over-year growth. It's budgeted at 5.8%, and again that reflects contract changes as well as step movement plus staff changes. It all feeds in there. Weighted average retirement rate used for all staff on payroll this year is going to be 29.75%. So what that means is for every $1 wages we pay also an additional $29.75 to the Office of Retirement Services, and it's kind of sparked in my head considering you just passed that amendment or that resolution. They're not my favorite people. The district-based healthcare insurance caps have been adjusted, and there's a process in place in terms of cost sharing and premium sharing related to that too. And then all other net operating costs, here's the catch-all bullet, all other net operating costs other than the wages and benefits that I just spoke to above have declined year over year. And really that's because there's a big chunk of insurance expenses that was done this year that's not happening, hopefully, knock wood, not happening next year. So that's really the big driver on that piece. So here's the 3-year budget forecast updated. This was, we looked at, probably, it was back in February, I believe, was the meeting on that. So this is where we're at. In the middle column there is proposed in the operating surplus piece of 213,000. Based on static information rolling forward, based on, we should be in a healthy, positive surplus generation position for the next few years beyond this coming year. But again, this does use static information, and whatever the state approves in 2 months could change a lot of that. But just to put forward a update of what we're looking at a couple of months back. So, and why, I thought I'd speak real quick about why the district wants a healthy fund balance. It's our primary source of district cash flow and working capital, and what that really means is that we make payroll every payroll cycle without even a thought of having to borrow. There are a number of districts in the state that have to borrow forward against their state aid just to make sure they have the actual cash in the bank to make payroll. That's really a function of what districts do 100% summer tax levy versus a lot of districts do 50 summer, 50 winter, and then the majority of our payments coming from the state for the new year coming up for fiscal 26, those payments won't even start till October. So if you don't have some solid cash in the bank, and you're gonna have some payroll challenges just to get to the state aid. And then the end of those payments won't occur till July of the following year. The cycle in which they pay, the state pays the districts is one that benefits the state, and of course, we get the not benefit side of it. Some of the other items too, from a healthy fund balance, is uncertainty of revenues. Again, state aid starting later into the year, unpredictability of categoricals and federal grant funding, year-over-year swings, as I pointed out in the P18 funding, unanticipated expenditures, i.e. the recent project that was fixed over at the middle school in terms of the transformer repair. And then it's a district-wide auditor recommendation. They're looking between 15 to 20% as a fund balance for these reasons. A lot of it has to do with the working capital. A district, when I worked in Rochester a number of years ago, they were on a state aid borrowing mode, and literally it cost that district at that time, and this was quite some time ago, $500,000 a year in interest expense just to be able to make payroll. So when you have a working capital that's available through your fund balance because you have a healthy fund balance, it has a lot of benefits in terms of cost saving and efficiency. So the other funds that are also included to be approved tonight is the Community Service Fund. A quick snapshot of the different revenues and expenditures. That fund's operating in a surplus, and we expect it's going to have an ending fund balance of about $550,000. The food service is in its second year of its fund balance spend down. Pretty much every school district in the state's food service program is operating under what's known as a spend down. The MDE has certain rules in place a number of years ago that their targeted fund balance for food service programs, they think it shouldn't be greater than 3 months worth of operating costs for your food service program. And then after the advent of all the COVID funding and everything, every state in the district was way beyond that because of all the federal funding and everything that poured in a short period of time. So like all the other districts, we're in the back end of our spend down plan, which predominantly involves some renovation work at kitchens at the middle school, the high school, and the OAIC facility. So that at the end of the coming year here, we expect the fund balance in the food service to be in about 228,000 range, which falls pretty much under that, under the MDE's expected fund balance target. Our school activity fund, also known as internal funds for the different accounts that the students that we have a fiduciary responsibility over. We're expecting about 1.3 million in revenues and about a little over 1.1 or 1.150 in spending. Surplus of about 80,000, a little bit growth in the estimating fund balance of 1.3 million. So those are special revenue funds that they used to be treated as trust and agency fiduciary responsibility funds. That changed a few years ago. GASB changed rules on it. Why to this day, I'm not sure why, but you know, that we can't change. We have to do what we're told through that process. So that we moved to this format, and we now call it a school activity fund. And this is really funding that if you think of all the different programs at the high school and the middle school where they're raising funds, the different kids groups are raising funds, this is where that money is accounted for. The debt service funds, the revenue budget's about 14 million, the expenditure budget's about 30 million. The operating deficit is about 16 million. I know that doesn't look good on paper, but one of the funds, one of the debt service funds, the 2010 bond was a qualified school construction bond program that has a $15 million payoff that is not due till May of 27, but we're in position now to pay it off in May of 26, so it shows up in this fiscal year. So there's a very large fund balance associated with all our debt service funds because there's an investment fund that was tied to that particular debt service fund that's been built up over the years and is now ready to pay that off. So as bad as that looks, it's a good thing. We're going to end up with a $600,000 balance in our accounts to move forward with. And through this process as well, we're going to be paying down our school bond loan fund balance by about $3.5 million based on projections, hopefully a little more. And then the capital project funds is budgeted at $700,000 in revenue. We're expecting to spend about $1 million just, and that's really an estimate based on what we've done in the last year here. So this fund itself, the capital projects, is more of an estimate in terms of what projects will be done. So the operating deficit there of $299,000, there's a fund balance coming in that year, or coming into the new year of 300-some thousand, so we'll have a small fund balance left in there. A fund balance for that fund is really only important if it's a bond-related capital project fund and you haven't spent all your bond proceeds. That's where it would show up. But this is the district's operating capital projects fund, so that's not unreasonable to expect a small fund balance left in there. So that's the end of the presentation. I would be happy to address any questions or thoughts, concerns.
Questions or comments? While you're up here, I just had a side question on the fire panel that was just discovered to be needing a replacement. Do you have an update on that, and is that already budgeted into this?
Well, the fire at the high school, you're talking about the fire panel there. It's been like lots of many of the things at that building are nearing its end of life. It's had in the last few years, especially when we get any power surges, it'll kick into what's known as trouble mode. Everything's still working, everything operates as supposed to, it just triggers it's a trouble alert. So they literally got to go in and reset it, push button, reset it until the next time it happens. One of the challenges with that facility recently, what came up this past week, is it's a different kind of a trouble alert showed up. It's tied to and I'm trying to see if we've got a pull in here. You know, the traditional pull stations, they all run through that panel. That panel thinks that there's another one that's not working somewhere. And we're in the process of tracking down which one is trying to identify. So when it goes through that cycle and it picks up on, it thinks there's a panel or a pull station that's got a problem, it sets off a trouble alert. So the process until we get it identified as to which one is the faulty one is literally just it's going to happen once a day. They literally got to go in and push the button, and then it'll reset for the next 24-hour period. So in terms of the big picture problems with the fire panel, because it's at its end of life in terms of its actual construct and the way it's set up in the building, the ideal would be to merge its functionality into the mass notification panel that's the new one in the building there. That is going to be expensive. We're working on plans and timelines as to when to do that. It's an ideal sinking fund type of expenditure. So depending upon how the vote goes for the program on that, it would be an ideal expenditure addressed through that fund as opposed to taking literally $250,000 of the general fund for that kind of a system. So it's going to be limped along, but I assure you that it's functionally fine. It's just got some peculiarities tied to it. And as a person that's getting older, I understand how peculiarities pop up with the age of one's body construct. So it works fine. There's no safety issues. It's a matter of timing and funding of when we actually come up with an overall plan to either replace it or merge it. To me, the ideal is to merge it with the new mass notification panel. So, but that's there's a lot of reprogramming that goes on with that and those kinds of things. It's not an inexpensive project.
And so that's not something that is already in this budget as an expected cost, the 250,000?
It's not specifically identified in this budget. There's specific amount identified for non-technology capital projects. There's some technology world, and then there's funding that's transferred into the capital projects fund to address these kinds of things. Depending upon what the final thinking and decision as to how we want to deal with it happens, it may happen out of this budget from that piece, but it's not a specifically identified project.
Okay. And I won't hold you to this, but you had guesstimated that there was about 2% of the budget spent on safety and 1.3% on psychological and health services. Is that, if you look at the last 5 years, are we still in an upward trajectory, or can you give an estimation of where the last 3 years maybe?
Well, I can speak to last year and this year.
Yeah.
And where we think we're going this coming year. Once you take out, if you pull out capital one-time purchases out of those functions, it's growing. It's growing at a predictable pace. It's not skyrocketing, but it's growing. What skews it is if, was it last year? I think we had a bunch of safety equipment purchases that would have showed up in the safety budgets that skewed it upwards. But if you take all that out, it's growing. It's growing at a safe, healthy pace as opposed to skyrocketing or cratering.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Anybody like to make that motion? I can. Move to approve fiscal year 2025-2026 budget resolution as presented. Support. Ann, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Then, you're still up. You
One
have
more.
One more.
Speaking of, we were just touching on this is the school loan revolving annual loan and repayment activity application resolution. This happens in the district every year. The point of it is to, it's used to give the state treasury a heads up as to what districts are going to need money and what districts are paying back, so they can figure out what net they need to borrow. This year, as I mentioned earlier, this is the first reading of the resolution. It'll be back on the 29th of July. And within this application for this year, we think we're paying down about $3.5 million against the balance of the school loan revolving fund. And we think that's a good thing, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on this one.
Any questions? All right. Well, we will see you back at the end of July for a vote on that.
Thank you.
All right. Item 8, unscheduled public comment. Thank you, Justin. We have 2. We will start with Danielle Krozek.
Good evening. First of all, I was out of the country when I heard about the take it or leave it settlement offer given to the families of Tate, Hannah, Madison, and Justin. I wish I could say that I was shocked. It's nothing short of insulting. It reeks of arrogance and continued desire to protect the institution over doing what is right. You haven't just failed these students, you've continued to fail them and their families. And worse, you are following in the footsteps of those who failed before you. Many of us thought a new board and new superintendent would help change that, and here we are a year later, and it has not. The school is negligent, and while immunity may shield the district legally, it does not relieve you of your obligation to make it right for the 4 families and the 1,600 students and staff. The insurance exists for a reason, to protect the district, its staff, and its students, not to shield administrators from accountability. The insurance funds in question are not yours. It belongs to the community. It was paid for by hardworking, tax-paying families that care about this community like myself. You've continued to allow an insurance company to lead these discussions, or maybe use that as an excuse. This is not just a leadership failure, it is a moral failure. And now, after all of this, you want to come back and ask the same victims in this community to approve a sinking fund. And we are supposed to blindly trust that you will do the right thing with this money. Blind trust is what led us to tragedy. Until the district demonstrates accountability, empathy, fiscal responsibility, demonstrates it, not just on PowerPoint, the vote on any new funds should be a resounding no. A lawsuit is not required to initiate the insurance coverage. The millions of dollars of death coverage, $20 million or more for real building reconstruction, $30,000 for mental health services for each of the 1,600 victims as per the district policy, insurance policy. The board claims to have no knowledge of the settlement, which in itself is concerning. You are responsible for overseeing the insurance policy for this district. The superintendent and director of business operations are responsible and in communication with the insurance company. Presumably, this means Tanya and John have agreed to proceed with this offer. Depending on the policy, the board should have approved. In any case, again, the board is responsible and accountable for transparency and oversight. So I have 3 questions that I'd like clearly and directly answered. Who authorized this offer? What is your explanation for not leveraging the insurance coverage as purchased and intended by this community? And why was the board shut out of these discussions? The community requires a voice, and that is through the president and/or vice president of the board. Transparency is not optional. Accountability is not optional. I will continue to stand with the families of Hannah, Tate, Madison, and Justin. It is long overdue for this board and those sitting in silence here or watching at home to stand as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Linda Jo White.
All right, beautiful humans. It's the end of the night, right? We're all together in a room here. It's great to see your faces.
It's gonna beep, just ignore it. I gotta reset this, but go. So I just wanted to not have it start over.
So my first question is anybody gonna answer her 3 questions right now? How did they get answered? Okay, so great to see your faces tonight, beautiful humans. My name is Linda Jo White, and I'm really torn right now. My heart is just torn. I'm here to be a voice for the families of Hannah, Tate, Madison, and Justin. I'm a mom, boy mom, wife. I want to take a minute to thank Michelle and Mr. Sanela. And are you Miss Collins? No, okay. Because I wanted to thank you too if you were. But for everything they did, right? Because my son got a text the day of the murders while he was being, whatever they do, right, hiding or whatever, that Hannah, who was a friend of his, and Tate, who helped him through football, had just been shot and killed. And I live on 24 and I'm hearing all the stuff, right? And so I'm a 25 plus year corporate quality auditor who is a root cause analysis girl. And I initially came here today because I saw Mr. Giuliano's thing and I'm like, how could they not know? How could this father be presented something? And how could y'all not know? because I've owned a business for 10 years, transportation manufacturing. We were vendors for the state. I worked at American Excellent Manufacturing and was mentored by Dick Dowk, who was the guy that Lee Iacocca says turned Chrysler around. And I've sat for hours, just like I did this evening, and hearing, how do we? And I'm sitting like, you want that MASB training? Get some root cause analysis training. Get some 5 why training and apply it to your systems. You, sir, Mike, Miss Amanda, Miss Tanya, Miss James, I don't claim to know you, but I've interacted with you. And I resonate with the statement that we thought things would be different. And in the 4 of you, I see hope. Ma'am, you're on the safety committee. I do my research because I'm an auditor. I'm also the oldest girl. I'm Sicilian. And I've been through some stuff in my life. I just turned 60, but at the age of 19, I was gang raped. And I speak openly about it because I've overcome it, but I overcame it because I dealt with the trauma. And part of dealing with that trauma, and any lawyer will tell you this in dealing with the situation, any healthcare worker will tell you, you have to go back to the incident. Your meeting tonight would have been half the amount of time if you would do what the community is asking. And that is to stop staying silent. Your silence is complicence with the oppressor. And that oppressor is the legal system. Okay? I appreciate your presentations, Ms. Milligan. But as part of that automotive manufacturing and going to the team quarterly meetings, right, and the rah-rah and all that kind of stuff, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. We are in flight mode as a community because of the failure to make it right. Do what Michigan State did. Pay these families. Make it right. Someone has to speak out. And I'm begging one of you tonight. I'm begging one of you. Are you on that safety committee, sir? And you, Miss Amanda. And I know there's a red light. You're forcing this community as trauma victims to have to reframe a violently tragic event without a foundation of trust. And until you take the necessary actions to reestablish trust, none of what you present up there is going to mean anything to any of us. We don't want to hear you. I'm in the community. I hear my son. I go to meditation. We're on the Facebook pages, all right? And it's all yap, 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 yap. You said, I didn't know what my child was going through. They don't want to hear it because they just want it to be made right.
Thank you. Ms. White, I appreciate your time tonight. All right, item 9, we have our next Board of Education meeting on July 29th. I can't believe this is already on the agenda, the first day of school, August 21st, and then some more upcoming meetings. Do we have any administrative clarification, Dr. Milligan? Okay, into final board comments. I would love to hear if you have any. This is where I was hoping we would touch a little bit on our survey that was filled out regarding the self-assessment. And now that we're at this point in the night, I think it also does lend to the fact that it would be a better placed item earlier in the agenda. So if there's not anything else outside of the assessment that anybody would like to discuss, I just wanted to highlight I'm not sure if you have it up on your computers or not, but item 3, 4, and 10 were the top 3. And to go over that, item 3 was, does our board create an environment that ensures that commitments and directives are in the best interest of all students? That one we scored as the highest priority. The next highest was, does our board value differences of opinion and avoid letting differences degenerate into personality conflicts? And so if anybody wanted to say anything in particular on that, I think that specifically for our item 3, some of the action steps and things that we could do to improve that area that I personally lifted up were that we prioritize transparency in our implementation by providing student-centered rationale behind all of our decisions, and that includes follow-up on the effects in our decisions and evaluate the metrics used. If we want to put it into examples, for instance, the curriculum, I think we do a very good job there of saying, this is going to be great for students, this is why, and these are the student outcomes and metrics we are hoping to achieve. Where I think maybe we could focus and doing better on are continuously doing that. For example, our science curriculum we just approved tonight. Not really sure how great or not great the previous science curriculum was. So I think, in my opinion, that was an action item that I lifted up. And I don't know if anybody had any other comments, suggestions on how we can improve our lowest scoring area. Yeah, this is definitely going to be better for the beginning of the meeting. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Let's try to tackle this again towards the beginning of the meeting, end of July. Okay. Okay, anyone else? All right, it's 9:17. This meeting is adjourned.